He was the only black student in the honors class, until the teacher accused him of cheating on a test he hadn't even taken. Cameras caught what no one expected. The teacher smiling as he slipped a fake Scantron into Javon's folder. Parents demanded answers, but what the principal did next shattered the school's silence. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The sun barely crested over the rooftops of Meadow Ridge when Javon Carter zipped up his hoodie and stepped out the front door. His breath steamed in the morning chill as he double-checked the weight in his backpack. His comfort zone was metal and circuits, not crowded classrooms. Inside his bag, a rusted wrench, a custom voltage reader he'd built from scrap, and a single notebook filled with sketches of engine designs no teacher had ever seen. This was the first day of AutoTech honors, the school's most selective engineering elective, and Javon already felt the walls closing in. At Meadow Ridge High, excellence was encouraged, just not his kind of excellence. Suburban, white, polished and wealthy, the school liked its prodigies predictable. Javon, a 16-year-old black teen, with more skill than swagger, didn't fit the brochure. As he walked through the front doors, eyes trailed him, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. He wasn't new, but he might as well have been invisible, until now. But today wasn't about being seen, it was about what he could do. The AutoTech lab smelled of motor oil and institutional polish. It was a shrine to precision, gleaming tool racks, diagnostic boards, and a dismantled dragster shell mounted like a trophy across the back wall. Javon took his seat near the rear, next to a busted power drill and an empty chair. He adjusted the wobble in his stool with a folded gum wrapper, always fixing what others ignored. Then he walked in. Mr. Halbridge, a retired engineer turned legend among the white legacy crowd. White polo, faded army tattoo, a clipboard like a weapon. He scanned the room like a drill sergeant, inspecting recruits. "Welcome to AutoTech honors," he said flatly. "You're here because someone thought you had potential. Prove them right, or prove them wrong. Doesn't matter to me." His gaze stopped on Javon, a microsecond too long. Whispers stirred already. One kid leaned over. "Bet they had to take one." Another, "Affirmative action admit." "You can tell." Javon heard it. He always heard it. Mr. Halbridge clapped his hands. "Let's get started. See that engine in the corner?" He pointed to a dust-covered, rusted Briggs & Stratton model mounted on a dolly. "Engine 24, he said. "It's been dead since 2017. No one's revived it. It's our mascot. You want to be a real mechanic? Make that breathe again." He scanned the room, eyes calculating. "Let's see if any of you got the guts to try." Then he paused. And like it was pre-planned, "Carter." Javon's head lifted. "You step up." A beat. Half the room turned to stare. A smirk broke out across the face of Austin McRae, varsity jacket half-zipped. "Let's see what genius looks like," someone muttered. Javon walked forward, slow, silent. His palms were slick, but his mind was already racing. He didn't need to touch it to diagnose it. He could hear the language of broken engines like others heard music. Halbridge folded his arms. "Bet you can't fix that busted engine if your life depended on it." Laughter, low and sharp. Some students didn't even bother hiding their grin. Javon knelt beside the engine, dust smeared across his hoodie sleeve. He didn't ask for gloves. He didn't ask for help. One glance told him everything. The carburetor's gasket was cracked. The governor's spring hung loose, and someone had purposely jammed a screw into the throttle linkage, as if to prove it couldn't be saved. Javon gritted his teeth. Sabotaged. He removed the jammed screw with precision. Then, from his pocket, pulled out a flathead screwdriver he always carried, one his grandfather gave him before passing. With 3 careful motions, he adjusted the tension spring, realigned the governor, and reset the throttle. He stood, reached for the pull cord. Some kid near the front whispered, "Watch this go nowhere." Javon pulled once. Choke. Shove. Then, VRR ROM. The engine roared to life. Clean. Controlled. Alive. Gasps broke out across the room. One girl flinched. Austin dropped his phone, then scrambled to hit record. For 5 full seconds, Engine 24 purred like a lion freshly awakened. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Javon shut it down. Silence returned, but not the same silence. This one vibrated. No one laughed. No one breathed. He turned around. calmly walked back to his seat. Sat down. Halbridge didn't move. His jaw clenched. Something unreadable flickered across his face. Confusion. Yes. But also something darker. Fear. Fear of being outdone. Outshined. By someone he never expected. Then, like clockwork, the bell rang. Halbridge didn't dismiss them. They dismissed themselves. Javon stayed seated, staring straight ahead. Behind him, Austin whispered to a friend. Bro. 5 seconds. I got it on camera. This is gonna blow up. But Javon didn't smile. This wasn't a victory. This was a trigger. In the back of the room, Mr. Halbridge remained frozen. Slowly, he walked to his desk and pulled open a drawer. Inside was a folder. Carter, J scrawled in bold ink. But it wasn't new. He opened it. Inside, a printed photo, yellowed at the edges. Javon at 9 years old, standing beside the same engine model, repaired, glowing with pride. It was the same engine. The same boy. But now he wasn't a boy anymore. Halbridge's hands trembled. Because he didn't just underestimate Javon Carter. He knew him from somewhere. And he thought he'd buried that past years ago. The classroom door clicked shut behind Javon. But the silence inside didn't follow him. It fractured into something sharper. Whispers. The kind that curved around corners and stuck to locker doors, like damp fog. Did you see that? Bro, 5 seconds. That engine was supposed to be dead. At first it was all raw, wide-eyed wonder. But awe doesn't last long in places built on quiet superiority. Awe gets replaced by discomfort, by questions, by something cold. Think he got help? Maybe someone rigged it before class? He probably watched a YouTube video. These people always fake it flashy. Those whispers carried a quiet poison. It didn't matter that Javon had done it in front of them. Fix the unfixable. His talent wasn't seen as brilliance. It was seen as a threat. By the time third period started, Austin McCrae had already uploaded the video. Vertical, shaky, unedited, just raw footage. Javon knelt at the engine. A few tweaks, then that unbelievable ignition. The roar, the silence. Halbridge frozen in disbelief. Austin captioned it. Black kid revives dead engine in 5 secs. Mr. Etchy's jaw dropped. It caught fire fast. By lunch it had over 64,000 views. Comments flooded in. This kid needs a scholarship now. Real life Tony Stark. Yo, this teacher looks mad. But not all praise is safe. Javon's victory, framed in white discomfort, triggered backlash underneath the applause. Behind the scenes, messages in the pit crew, a private group chat of white AutoTech kids, started to shift. That clip makes us all look dumb. This is gonna ruin the program's rep. Did y'all see Halbridge's face? The mall. He looked scared. It's not that deep. Kid probably got lucky. That word again. Lucky. Javon walked the halls slower now. Eyes followed him like laser sights. He could feel something shifting, like the floor beneath him had tilted a few degrees and no one else had noticed yet. During fourth period, the school intercom buzzed. A short crackle, then, Javon Carter. Please report to the principal's office. Immediately. The hallway froze around him. Heads turned. A few students exchanged glances. The whispers started again. He stood up steady but coiled, and walked. Principal Dana Whitmore's office was quiet and cold. The blinds were drawn. A framed photo of her with the governor hung behind her desk. Her posture, upright and controlled, didn't budge as he entered. Sit down, Javon. He did. I wanted to speak with you about today's events. The video. Javon didn't say anything. Whitmore folded her hands. Let me be clear. We're proud of our students, especially those who show initiative. But the kind of attention this video is attracting, it can be misinterpreted. Misinterpreted how? Her lips pressed thin. Some feel it was meant to humiliate Mr. Halbridge. That the demonstration was staged. That's not true. I'm not saying it is, she said quickly. But perception matters, Javon. And right now, there's tension building. Some of the parents have called, concerned about the tone the class is taking.
What tone?
Competitive, disruptive, emotionally charged. Javon stared at her. His voice when it came was dry and calm. You're asking me to stop. We're suggesting you explore other electives. Maybe something in the arts or sciences. His voice dropped. You mean not engineering? Whitmore didn't respond. But the message was clear. That evening, Javon sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cold plate of food in front of him. His mother, Kendra Carter, stood with her arms crossed, phone in hand. "They called you in because you embarrassed a teacher?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "They said it caused tension." "Of course it did," she snapped. "A black boy shows up and outthinks the whole class in 5 seconds. They don't like their system being cracked open." She paced the kitchen floor like a lit fuse. "You know what this is? It's not about an engine. It's about control. I didn't expect you to be that good. And now they're scared you'll keep being that good." Javon didn't answer. He didn't need to. That night, the video broke 200,000 views. The next morning, Javon moved through school like a ghost, wrapped in dynamite. No one touched him. No one dared. But their eyes said everything. Austin caught up to him in the hallway, shoulders tense. "Hey man. Just wanted to say, that video's crazy. You really did something." Javon kept walking. "I didn't mean anything by it," Austin added quickly. "I just thought people should see it. That's all." Javon stopped. "And what did they see?" Austin hesitated. "A genius." But even he didn't sound convinced. By lunch, Mr. Halbridge had taken his own damage control into gear. In the AutoTech lab, he addressed the class solemnly. "There's been a lot of noise about what happened yesterday. I just want to clear things up. That engine had been tampered with long before that class. Someone must have adjusted it. Maybe a prank, maybe unintentional." He didn't name Javon, but he didn't have to. The implication was an infection, a doubt. And in environments like Meadow Ridge, doubt spreads faster than truth. After lunch, Javon opened his locker to grab his calc book. As he reached in, a small rectangular object fell out. A USB flash drive, wrapped in a sticky note, in messy, uneven handwriting. "You'll want to see what Halbridge said about you after class." He looked around. Nobody. Just lockers. Just kids passing by, pretending not to watch. Javon gripped the USB tight in his palm. Was this proof? A trap? Or something else entirely? Only one way to find out. Javon stared at the USB in his hand like it was radioactive. It felt too light for what it might carry. Like the weight of truth had somehow been compressed into plastic and metal. He didn't take it home. He couldn't. The moment felt too big to be alone with it. He cut through the back corridor of the school, past the shuttered library annex, and into the underused AV lab, where the computers were old but still functional. The room was empty, just flickering fluorescent lights and the low whir of an outdated cooling fan. He slid the USB into the port. 1.5. Halbridge Rec 4 p.m. No labels, no edits, just raw audio. He hit play. "I'm telling you, that kid's a fluke." 5 seconds? No way. That engine was staged. Either someone helped him, or it was dumb luck. Another voice laughed lightly. "Well, you've got a viral hit on your hands now." Then Halbridge again, quieter but clearer. "Black kids like that. They're good with their hands. I'll give him that. But with their heads, come on. Engineering's about structure, not flash. He'll burn out by mid-semester. They always do." Pause. "He doesn't belong in my program." Javon's jaw clenched. His throat tightened like a vice. The audio wasn't yelling. It wasn't slurs shouted in the heat of anger. It was worse. It was calculated, casual, deep-rooted. This wasn't just an insult. It was erasure spoken with the ease of someone who had said it before and had never once been challenged. He copied the file, uploaded it to a secure drive. Then he made a decision that even surprised himself. He posted it. No caption, no edits, no theatrics. Just the audio. By midnight, it had crossed 10,000 plays. By morning, it was front page on local Reddit, Twitter, and small YouTube commentary channels. "Teacher says black kid doesn't belong in engineering." Meadow Ridge High under fire. Systemic racism or simple misunderstanding. The school tried to ignore it, pretended like nothing had happened. But the community didn't. A group of black parents staged a protest outside the school gates. News vans circled the perimeter like vultures. Kendra Carter showed up, microphone in hand, reading directly from a printed transcript of Halbridge's words. He said, "My son is a fluke. But the only fluke is that someone like Halbridge was ever allowed to shape young minds." Still, resistance came fast and familiar. On the PTA Facebook page, white parents flooded the comments. "Let's hear both sides." Maybe it was taken out of context. "I've known Mr. Halbridge for years. He would never say anything racist. This is just cancel culture." The school board finally responded with a carefully worded statement. "We take all allegations seriously. We are currently conducting an internal investigation. But internal investigations at Meadow Ridge were like fog, thick, slow, and designed to disappear without consequence. Javon could feel it happening already. Staff who once nodded politely now avoided eye contact. His AP chemistry teacher didn't call on him for 3 days. In English class, he was reassigned from group projects without explanation. He passed a guidance counselor who muttered to another teacher. He used to be so quiet. A whisper followed him into every room. Troublemaker. The local media didn't help. A conservative news station ran a segment. Student disrupts engineering class. Was it a setup? They aired the clip of the engine, but layered it with dramatic music and commentary that questioned whether Halbridge was the real victim. One pundit called Javon a divisive element. Another said he was being used for political gain. At home, Javon scrolled through the headlines until his mother snatched the phone from his hands. "You are not their narrative," she said firmly. "You are not what they say you are." But she didn't sleep that night. Javon heard her quietly on the phone with a legal aid office in Philly. "I'm not letting this bury him," she whispered. "Not my son. Not this time." At school the next day, Javon walked to his locker and found an envelope taped to the inside of the door. Unmarked. Thick. No handwriting. He looked around. No one was watching. Or maybe everyone was. He tore it open. Inside was a folded blueprint. Crisp. Creased. Technical. A hand-sketched engine design complex. Futuristic. Something he had never seen before. Taped to it was a note in red ink. "Think the Briggs was impressive? Try building this." No name. No signature. Just a challenge. Javon stared at the blueprint, heart pounding. Who sent this? And more importantly, why did it look exactly like something he had once imagined, but never shown anyone? Javon's hands trembled as he unfolded the blueprint again, smoothing the creases on the chipped metal desk in his bedroom. His eyes scanned the sketched lines, the symbols, the annotations, each one sparking something in his brain like a puzzle he already knew the solution to, but had never dared to speak aloud. It wasn't just an engine. It was an entirely new kind of propulsion system. A hybrid of compressed magnetic resonance and ultra-efficient battery rotation. No exhaust. No spark plug ignition. Fully self-sustaining under the right load calibration. And it wasn't from any textbook he'd ever read. Whoever drew it didn't just understand engineering. They understood him. At the bottom right corner, in the same red ink as the note, were 6 words. "That you can't build it, Carter." It wasn't a dare. It was a door. He didn't sleep that night. He dissected every component on paper, reverse-engineered the inner flow, built 3D mental simulations in his mind. For most people, this engine was a concept. But to Javon, it was a heartbeat, and it was alive. The next morning, instead of heading to class, he detoured. The AutoTech lab was empty during homeroom. Javon moved silently, grabbing discarded parts from the scrapyard bin near the back. Coils, stripped wires, a broken capacitor, a hollowed-out alternator casing. He stuffed everything into his backpack and left unnoticed. That afternoon, he cleared out the corner of his garage, sweeping away old bikes and busted lawn equipment. Kendra peeked in, holding a mug of coffee, one brow raised. "You turning this into NASA?" she asked. "Something like that," he replied. She didn't press. She saw the fire in his eyes, the kind that reminded her of his father, before he vanished from their lives when Javon was 6. A different kind of silence filled the garage, one that vibrated with intent. 3 days in, and Javon hit a wall. He had the foundation, but not the interface that would regulate current distribution across the dual rotation shafts. It needed smarter coding, tighter circuitry, and more than just his 2 hands. He knew exactly who to call. Sasha Malik wasn't just a robotics geek. She was a genius with electrical flows, someone who thought in binary, when the world demanded emotion. Her hijab was often tucked beneath a welder's helmet, and her lunchbox was always full of spare circuit boards. She met him at the edge of the robotics club, after school. He didn't need to explain everything, just showed her the blueprint. Her eyes widened before she even finished the page. "This is unreal," she whispered. "I think I can build it," Javon said, "but not alone." She nodded without hesitation. "I'm in." Then came Eli Ramirez, a coding prodigy who once hacked the school's vending machines to give out free snacks for fun. He saw the engine schematics and let out a soft whistle.
This is math and poetry," he murmured. "Where did you get this?"
"Anonymous," Javon answered. Eli looked up sharply. "You realize this design's not modern. It's derived. Derived from what?" Eli flipped open his tablet and ran a pattern trace. After 2 hours of searching, cross-referencing and decoding watermarks, they found it. Buried in a 1973 library archive was a near-identical schematic filed by a black inventor named Leonard O. Hastings. Never patented, never produced, never credited. Why hasn't this been built before? Sasha asked. Javon didn't need to say it. Because it came from black hands. Because the system doesn't fund what it fears. From that moment, the garage became a cathedral. Screws became scripture. Every bolt Javon tightened was an act of defiance. Every circuit Sasha soldered was a prayer. Every code Eli wrote rewrote history. By the end of the first week, they had a half-assembled prototype, rough, unstable, but humming with promise. They ran tests under low voltage. The gyroscopic core wobbled but didn't fail. Javon watched it in motion and felt something shift in his chest. It wasn't pride. It was righteousness. A knowledge that they were reviving, not just a machine, but a legacy buried by silence. They kept their work hidden, not just from the school, but from everyone. Too many eyes had already twisted Javon's story. Too many mouths had bent his truth. This engine wasn't for TikTok. It wasn't for Halbridge. It was for every kid who'd ever been told you don't belong here. But secrets are never fully safe. One night, after another 6-hour build session, Javon rolled down the garage door and locked it. The blueprint, now worn and fingerprinted, was folded beneath a toolbox. His tools were neatly arranged. The prototype was covered with a gray tarp. He walked inside, showered, and collapsed into bed. By morning, everything had changed. The garage door was already up when he came outside. Javon froze on the porch, his breath caught in his throat. The toolbox was overturned. The tarp ripped open. The capacitors gone. Wires cut. Parts missing. The blueprint gone. He stepped into the garage like it had become a crime scene. Someone had broken in. Someone new. As he stared at the wreckage, Javon noticed something chilling. A single black glove, wedged between the wall and the workbench, with MRHS AutoTech Lab printed inside. It was still early. Barely 6 in the morning when Kendra Carter stepped outside with her robe pulled tight and a steaming mug of coffee in hand. The sun had just started to light the sky, and the air smelled like dew and distant mulch. Her eyes scanned the driveway casually, until she saw it. The garage door was wide open. A small, cold dread settled in her stomach. She hurried forward, slippers slapping against the pavement. What she found stopped her breath. The garage was wrecked. Javon's workstation was overturned. His tools, carefully categorized, bagged and labeled, were scattered across the floor, some broken, others missing entirely. His voltage board was cracked down the center. The battery cells they'd rigged just 2 nights earlier were gone, and the blueprint, gone. The tarp that once covered the prototype was crumpled in a heap like discarded skin. Wires had been cut, not just pulled but sliced cleanly. Deliberately. Whoever had done this knew exactly what to damage. "Javon," she yelled, her voice cracking. She came flying down the stairs moments later, one sneaker untied. The moment he saw the destruction, his face froze. No shock, no confusion, just a silent, deep devastation that radiated through his bones. He didn't move for several seconds. "They knew what they were looking for," he said quietly. The police arrived within 20 minutes. A bulky officer with aviators hanging from his chest took one look and shrugged. "Looks like a break-in. Probably just kids." Kendra frowned. "Kids don't cut high-gauge copper wire with surgical precision." The officer sniffed. "Could have been looking for scrap. People do that." "Nothing was taken that looks valuable." "It was valuable," Javon cut in. "You just don't know what you're looking at." The officer raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Could be someone in the neighborhood." Kendra asked about the security cameras on their block. The officer nodded slowly. "Most of the neighborhood cams reset automatically every 48 hours. Yours isn't connected to the cloud, right?" She shook her head. "They hadn't upgraded." "Well," he said, closing his notepad, "unless someone confesses or shows up on social media, there's not much else we can do. Files open if anything else comes up." He left like he had just cataloged a dented mailbox. By nightfall, the silence in the Carter home was thick. Javon sat on the floor of the garage, shoulders slumped against the concrete wall, staring at the twisted skeleton of what once was the most important project of his life. Sasha came by with a bag of spare wires. Eli dropped off a backup hard drive with notes from their last few sessions. But Javon barely spoke. That night, as he walked through the hallway at school, something new awaited him. His locker door had been taped shut, sloppily, with duct tape and permanent marker scratched across the front in jagged, uneven letters. "Still think you belong?" Students walked past it like it was normal. No one stared. No one gasped. Like this was just routine now. He peeled the tape slowly, fingers shaking, not with fear but something hotter, angrier. During sixth period, Javon walked into the AutoTech lab to retrieve a charger he had left behind. The room was dim, most of the students out on field practice. But someone was inside. Mr. Halbridge, crouched low near the back table, camera phone in hand, snapping pictures of something on a sheet of graph paper. Javon froze. Halbridge turned slowly, caught like a fox with blood on its lips. "Didn't expect you during class," he said casually. "What are you doing?" Javon asked, his voice hollow. "Just documenting." Halbridge gestured vaguely at the paper. "It's important to catalog student work for evaluation purposes. That's not your paper." Halbridge stood up, smoothing the wrinkles on his sleeve. "Everything created in this lab is school property." He walked past Javon, the unspoken message clear. "I own this space. You don't." That night, Javon made a decision. He went online and ordered a refurbished set of security cameras. Motion activated, cloud-backed, night vision enabled. He spent the next day rewiring the garage with surgical precision. This time, no blind spots. No mercy. He wasn't rebuilding for fun now. He was rebuilding for proof. A week passed. Javon, Sasha, and Eli rebuilt from memory. They didn't have the original blueprint, but the bones were still in their minds. They worked in silence, a quiet urgency between them. Late one night, Javon checked the footage, and there it was, 1:40. A figure in a hoodie, entering from the side gate. A flashlight, gloves, a tool bag, moving like they belonged, like they knew exactly where everything was. The footage was grainy, but when the figure lifted their hand to adjust their cap, the light hit their face just enough. Javon's heart skipped. He recognized the jawline, the posture, the careless confidence. The thief was someone from his AutoTech class. And worse, he wasn't working alone. Javon sat at his desk with the garage footage paused on his laptop screen. The image was grainy, but the face was unmistakable. Austin McCrae, the same kid who filmed his 5-second engine miracle, the same kid who dapped him up in the hallway and smiled like they were cool. And now, the same kid caught sneaking into his garage in the middle of the night with a flashlight and gloves. Javon stared at the frame, his breath slow but heavy. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could post it. Right now. Let the world see. But something held him back. A noise. Or maybe a memory. Austin's voice. From just a few weeks ago. "I didn't mean anything by it. I thought people should see what you did." Now he had to see something else. The next day, Javon waited until the last bell rang before heading to the parking lot. Austin was already there, leaned up against his Jeep, earbuds in, scrolling through his phone like it was any other Tuesday. Javon approached from the side, calm, collected. "You forgot something at my house," he said. Austin flinched, took a moment to understand. Then his face collapsed. "You saw the footage?" Javon nodded. "I saw everything." Austin looked down, guilt slicing through his posture like a knife. "I didn't think you'd have cameras. You thought I wouldn't protect what I built." Austin's voice cracked. "I didn't mean to take it. I swear. They just told me to mess with it. Cut a few wires. Scare you off." Javon's jaw tightened. "Who's they?" Austin looked around nervously. "It was just a joke. A dare. The pit crew chat, remember that group?" Javon said nothing. Austin continued, words tumbling now, desperate and cracking. "They said if you messed up the build, the pressure would go down. That maybe Halbridge would drop the whole thing. That people would stop making it about race." "Making it about race?" Javon repeated slowly. "You think I made this about race?" Austin stammered. "No. I mean, it's just this place. People talk. I didn't think you were serious. I didn't think you were gonna be that good." There it was, the truth hidden beneath the guilt. Austin handed him his phone. Unlocked. Shaking. "You should see it," he said. Inside was a chat titled, "Pit Crew Rebuild Only." Javon scrolled, each message slicing deeper. "He's not even in the top half of the class. Why is he getting all the attention? Bet Halbridge only let him in so we don't get cancelled. I heard he's building some fake Tesla engine in his garage. We should make sure it doesn't work. Yo, who's gonna accidentally leave the side gate open this weekend? LMAO. Maybe if his project goes missing, he'll go missing too. Even Halbridge said he won't last. Doesn't have the mindset. But it was one message that stopped everything cold. Halbridge said if we can take the heat off his back, he'll look the other way. He owes us. Javon's hands went numb. The sabotage wasn't just tolerated, it was encouraged. And Halbridge was complicit. He took screenshots of everything. Every message. Every date stamp. When he looked back up, Austin was near tears. I didn't know it would go this far, he whispered. I didn't think you'd keep fighting. Javon stepped closer. And that's the problem, Austin. You thought I'd break. That night, Javon uploaded the screenshots. No commentary. No hashtags. Just facts. The internet didn't hesitate. Reddit threads exploded. TikTok users made breakdown videos with dramatic narration. Hashtags trended nationally. Sabotage in STEM. Halbridge knew. Justice for Javon. A Black STEM collective reposted the images with a caption that read, "This is why we build our own labs." By morning, the superintendent's office had received over 30,000 emails demanding an external investigation. But Meadow Ridge didn't respond with apology. They responded with a suspension notice. Javon was called to the principal's office again, where Dana Whitmore looked like she hadn't slept. "We received word that you accessed and distributed private student communications," she said. "I exposed harassment," Javon replied flatly. "You did so using unauthorized devices and without school consent," she said. "This is retaliation," Kendra snapped, seated beside her son. The board voted unanimously. Javon is suspended for 10 days, pending further review. Kendra leaned forward. While actual students vandalized his home, while a teacher participated in it, "We're conducting an internal investigation," Whitmore repeated, voice tighter. "Your internal investigations mean nothing," Kendra said, standing now. "We're done playing polite." That night, Kendra posted the suspension notice on Twitter. Within an hour, a civil rights page retweeted it with a caption, "Black brilliance punished again." At 2 a.m., Javon's phone buzzed. A new number. A simple message. "This is Marilyn Breck, former federal prosecutor. I've seen your case. Let's talk." Javon looked at the screen. Someone powerful was finally listening. And they weren't asking for permission. When the news of Javon's suspension hit national headlines, it didn't crawl. It detonated. Justice for Javon flooded Twitter. Cable news hosts debated it. Podcasts unpacked it. Activists reposted his story with captions like "Brilliance shouldn't come with a penalty" and "Genius doesn't need permission." The original TikTok video of the 5-second engine revival hit 10 million views. Within 24 hours, over 300,000 signatures landed on a petition titled, "Reinstate Javon Carter. Fire Halbridge." But while the internet howled with righteous fury, inside Meadow Ridge's pristine brick walls, the administration doubled down. Their press release was cold, clipped and legal. The student in question violated protocol and engaged in the unauthorized release of peer communications. The school stands by its disciplinary process. No mention of the sabotage. No mention of the teacher. No mention of race. The morning after the release, Marilyn Breck stepped into the Carter home, like a storm wrapped in a navy blue pantsuit. She was tall, fierce, and moved like she was 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. "Let's get to work," she said without shaking hands. "Because this isn't just about a suspension. It's about a system." Javon watched her unpack a laptop, legal folders, and a portable printer with the efficiency of someone who had buried corrupt institutions before breakfast. He didn't trust lawyers, but something in the way Marilyn ignored the pleasantries told him she wasn't here for the press. She was here for results. She pulled up a document. Federal Civil Rights Complaint. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, Discrimination in Education. Unfiling it this afternoon, Kendra exhaled sharply. "Finally." Marilyn glanced at Javon. "But I need more than outrage. I need your voice." The media firestorm pushed Meadow Ridge into emergency meetings. The school board, previously invisible, released another statement, calling the issue complex and highly sensitive. They refused to use the words racism or bias. Meanwhile, students were splitting into 2 clear camps. One group, led by Sasha and Eli, organized a walkout. Nearly 150 students stood on the front lawn holding signs that read, "Let him build," and "Genius isn't a disruption." The other side, smaller but louder, chanted from behind the glass doors. Keep school politics free. He broke the rules. He made it about race. The divide in the school hallways turned toxic. Some teachers quietly applauded the walkout. Others turned their backs. One guidance counselor allegedly told a student, "We shouldn't celebrate rule breakers, no matter how smart they are." Word got back to Javon. He didn't flinch. While the school tried to make him disappear, Javon built. Marilyn offered her own garage, a cold, dusty space, stacked with boxes and old legal textbooks. Javon, Sasha, and Eli transformed it into a sanctuary of steel and code. Javon didn't speak much during the first few days. He worked with the intensity of someone racing extinction. He took what they tried to destroy and made it smarter. The new prototype was leaner, quieter, faster. Every component was hand-assembled from repurposed parts. The electric core spun at 37% more efficiency than their first model. Sasha nearly cried when they ran the first silent cycle test. Eli whispered, "This doesn't just work, it sings." One evening, Marilyn burst into the garage holding a letter. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Javon looked up from the wiring. "You've been invited to present your engine at the National Youth Innovation Summit in D.C. Sasha gasped. Eli dropped a socket wrench.
Javon blinked.
"Me?" "You," Marilyn confirmed. "They saw the news, read your documentation, and bumped you into a featured spot. They want the engine. They want you." For the first time in weeks, Javon smiled. A real one. Then it dropped. "They'll need my transcripts," he said quietly. Marilyn's smile disappeared. The next day she called the school. She emailed. She even hand-delivered a formal request under FERPA. The school responded with a thin-lipped letter. "At this time, the student's disciplinary status is under review. Therefore, academic documents are temporarily inaccessible pending the outcome." In other words, no transcripts, no summit. Javon sat in silence as Marilyn read the letter aloud in the garage. "They're trying to choke you out," she said. "With red tape and delays, it's a slow suffocation, hoping you'll give up." "I'm not giving up," Javon said. She looked at him and saw something shift. Not a boy beaten down, but a young man building through the fire. Late that night, Marilyn sat in her home office, digging through every public record she could find on Halbridge. Awards, reviews, school board reports. Most of it was clean, too clean, until she pulled up a faculty archive from in an old archived server backup, buried beneath layers of committee meeting notes. She found an email labeled, "Ray Grant Review, Affirmative Action." She opened it. It was from Halbridge. "We keep getting these scholarship kids in the door. Most of them can barely spell engineer, let alone become one. I'm tired of wasting time pretending we're all equal in aptitude. Some minds just aren't wired for this kind of work." Marilyn sat back in her chair, mouth tightening into a razor-thin line. The date, the sender, the school header, everything was traceable. She printed it immediately. Then she called Kendra. "Tell Javon," she said. "We have what we need." She wasn't smiling when she hung up, because there were 4 more emails in that chain, and one of them was signed by the school principal. The sun rose over Meadow Ridge, like any other day, but inside the Carter home, the atmosphere was electric. Javon sat at the dining room table, staring at the freshly printed emails spread before him like pieces of a map, each one a fragment of truth, ugly and undeniable. Marilyn Breck stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, reading them aloud one by one. "They're not built for this. Affirmative action parasites. We pretend they're gifted, but all they've mastered is handouts and headlines. I've spent 30 years watching underqualified kids take up space because some administrator wants to feel progressive. It's not racism, it's realism." Each line was worse than the last, and at the bottom of one thread, buried beneath a dismissive, "Let's discuss in person," was the signature of Principal Dana Whitmore. She hadn't written the slurs, but she hadn't stopped them either. By noon, the documents were in the hands of journalists. Marilyn didn't send them anonymously. She sent them under her own name, attached to a civil rights violation brief, a press release, and a digital folder titled, "Silence Isn't Neutral." The response was instant. The local news stations broke it first, then the national ones followed. By sunset, Meadow Ridge wasn't a school district. It was a headline. Emails show veteran teacher referred to black students as parasites. District under fire after racist faculty communications surface. Civil rights complaint filed as school faces mounting pressure. The district's response was swift. but slippery. They released a 4-sentence statement. We have been made aware of disturbing emails from a former staff member. We are conducting a full review. The comments viewed in isolation do not reflect the values of Meadow Ridge. We urge the community not to rush to judgment. Viewed in isolation. Javon read those words over and over, as if racism had to come with a disclaimer. As if centuries of silence could be justified with 4 sentences. Marilyn wasn't having it. She called a press conference on the school lawn. Dozens gathered, students, parents, reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. Sasha and Eli stood beside Javon in matching STEM is not a privilege shirts. Kendra gripped her son's hand with quiet steel. Marilyn stepped to the mic like it owed her a favor. These emails do not exist in a vacuum, she said. They reflect a culture, a pattern, a system that punishes black excellence while protecting white fragility. The crowd stirred. And Meadow Ridge? You've been complicit. This isn't about one teacher. It's about a leadership that read these words and looked away. Across town, Thomas Halbridge sat in a radio booth. Conservative talk show. AM dial. The host, all fake laughs and dog whistles, handed him the mic like it was a weapon. This is a witch hunt, Halbridge said into the mic, his voice sharp with controlled indignation. I taught kids for 35 years. I loved my job. I told hard truths. That's not racism. It's realism. The host nodded, grinning. You're not allowed to say anything these days without being cancelled. Halbridge continued. I never used racial slurs. I just said some students aren't built for engineering. If we're not honest about aptitude, we set them up to fail. He was calm, rehearsed, dangerous. And by the next morning, his words had gone viral again, this time with an audience who applauded. Then came the hate mail. Javon opened his inbox to find messages laced with venom, entitled Little Punk. You don't deserve to be in a white school. They'll shut you down, just wait. Some messages came with racial slurs, others with veiled threats. One simply read, You brought this on yourself. Kendra took screenshots of everything, reported each one. The police opened a low-risk file, logged the threats, and told them not to worry. These don't sound credible, the officer said. Just online noise. Javon didn't respond. He had heard those words before. Not credible was what they said until something broke. That something came on a Wednesday night. Javon was in the living room, soldering a stabilizer piece for the new engine model. Kendra had just gone upstairs. The house was quiet, peaceful in its own way, until the sound shattered everything. Glass, cracking, exploding. A brick hurled through the front window. It landed on the hardwood floor like a punch to the chest. Javon ducked, heart racing. Kendra screamed from upstairs. When the dust settled, he saw it. Attached to the brick was a note, torn jagged, written in red Sharpie. Shut it down, or we shut you down. Javon stood frozen, blood pounding in his ears. But it wasn't the threat that rattled him most. It was what was scribbled at the bottom of the note. Nice garage, by the way. The note was still clutched in Javon's hand when the police arrived. Flashlights slicing through the night like accusations. An officer collected the brick, took a photo of the shattered glass, and scribbled into his pad like it was just another line in a long report. This looks targeted, he said, but his tone lacked urgency. Kendra stood behind Javon, arms wrapped around her robe, eyes locked on the gaping hole in their living room window. So what are you going to do about it? The officer sighed. We'll log the incident and notify patrol, but without security footage, we can't confirm who threw it. Could be kids. Javon turned toward him slowly. Kids don't threaten to burn down garages. The officer shifted uncomfortably. We'll keep an eye on the area. Then he was gone. Just like that. That night, while Kendra duct-taped cardboard over the window, Javon sat alone in the garage, staring at the latest version of the engine. He didn't touch it. Not yet. He just listened to the stillness. The way it echoed off the concrete floor, as if the space itself was holding its breath. The note, nice garage by the way, had been a message, not just a warning. A promise. They were watching. Javon looked around the garage, at the security cameras he had mounted weeks earlier. Nothing had triggered them. The brick had come from the front, just outside the camera's range. He exhaled slowly, the weight in his chest pulsing like an unrelenting current. They wanted him afraid. So he got angry. By morning he was back under the engine frame, bolting a modified solar panel module onto the test chassis. The garage lit up with the hum of motion. Eli wired a temporary interface to monitor output, and Sasha calibrated the charge converter. Javon stayed silent as he worked, jaw clenched, eyes bloodshot. No more talking. No more waiting for permission. They wanted to break him brick by brick, so he'd build back bolt by bolt. 2 days later, the test model moved. It was subtle at first, just a glide across the linoleum board. But it moved. On solar backup alone. Sasha gasped. Eli dropped his tablet. Javon didn't celebrate. He just nodded once. Again. They ran it 3 more times. Each time, it moved farther. Cleaner. No combustion. No exhaust. Just stored light turned into controlled motion. By the 5th test, Sasha whispered, "Do you realize what this means?" Eli was already calculating. With enough refinement, it could revolutionize small transport systems. Electric bikes. Grid-free city vehicles. Javon stared at the engine. It means they were wrong. The whispers of his success leaked beyond the garage. By the end of the week, 2 black engineers from a local auto research firm showed up at the Carter house. One of them, a tall woman named Dr. Jaleesa Moreau, had once built backup power systems for NASA's Artemis program. "I heard about you," she said, shaking Javon's hand with a grip like steel. "Had to see for myself." They spent the afternoon reviewing his notes, testing voltage output, and comparing it to archived engine studies. "This is brilliant," Dr. Moreau said. "Crude, sure, but it's decades ahead of the local curriculum." "You built this from scraps?" the other engineer, a soft-spoken man named Reggie, asked. "Scraps," Javon confirmed. "And spite." They laughed. Not at him, with him. For the first time in months, he felt seen without being questioned. Before leaving, Dr. Moreau handed him a business card. "You keep going, we'll keep watching." Days later, the school district issued a statement. "Effective immediately, Mr. Halbridge has been placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of the board investigation." It wasn't a firing, but it was crack in the fortress. A school board hearing was scheduled for the following week. Community members would be allowed to attend. Cameras too. Marilyn began preparing Javon for testimony. "They'll try to make you look angry," she warned. "Don't let them pull that card." "I am angry," he replied. "Then control it. Weaponize it. Make them regret ever thinking you'd stay silent." That evening, Sasha pulled Javon aside as they packed up for the night. "There's something I didn't tell you," she said, nervously tugging at the sleeve of her hoodie.
What's up?
"My dad, he's a senior designer at Tesla Labs, Palo Alto campus. He's seen your work." Javon blinked. "You showed him?" She nodded. "I had to. He thinks it's incredible, and he's offering to present your prototype to the design team next quarter, under your name." Javon's breath caught. He wasn't used to doors opening. He was used to breaking through them. "You serious?" "Completely. They're excited. But he said it'd help if there's a working model ready to demo. Clean run. Full cycle." Javon looked at the engine. They had one shot to prove it wasn't just an idea, it was real. 2 days later, they hosted a live test. A small group gathered: Dr. Moreau, a local tech blogger, a few curious neighbors, and Sasha's father on Zoom from California. The prototype was perched on a rolling test platform. Javon had double-checked every bolt, recalibrated the load sensors, and optimized the solar array with a high-efficiency filter. Sasha stood by with a voltage reader. Eli monitored the heat index. Javon stepped forward, hands steady. "This is the Polaris 3 prototype," he began. "No combustion, no fossil fuels, solar-sustained motion." He pressed the ignition. The LED flashed green. Then, the engine coughed. Buzz. And suddenly, the wheelbase shuddered violently. A spark burst from the converter. Eli shouted, "Kill it." But the system shorted before Javon could react. The prototype collapsed sideways, one of the panel arms snapping clean. The garage went dead silent. Sasha's dad dropped off the call. Dr. Moreau's face was unreadable. Javon stood frozen, breath caught, as the smoke curled up from the failed frame. Before anyone could speak, Sasha leaned in and whispered, "That module was swapped. That's not the one I installed." The smoke curled in lazy spirals as it rose from the prototype's cracked frame, the scent of scorched plastic and shame staining the air. Everyone stood still. Sasha's father had already disconnected from the call. Dr. Moreau crouched beside the engine, but her silence was worse than disappointment. It was assessment. Like she was calculating how much of this could be salvaged, if any. Javon didn't speak. He couldn't. His mouth was dry. his chest hollow. His hands, once surgical, certain, trembled. The Polaris 3 prototype, months in the making, had collapsed in front of everyone who mattered. The local tech blogger who had been recording the whole demo stopped filming but kept typing. His tweets went up within minutes. Engine sputters. Frame collapses. Promising teen engineer stumbles in crucial live demo. Prototype failure calls into question Carter's credibility. By nightfall, the footage had already reached corners of the internet that were waiting, hungry, for Javon to fail. Critics latched on instantly. He's a kid with a wrench. Not a genius. See? It was hype. Social media does this all the time. Now maybe we can go back to real engineers. Some said it softly. Some said it cruelly. But all said the same thing. He's not who we thought he was. And then, as if summoned by the collapse itself, Thomas Halbridge re-emerged. He wasn't at school. He wasn't even officially allowed to speak. Still under investigation. But that didn't stop him from calling into a local conservative podcast. I warned everyone, he said smugly. 5 seconds of theatrics doesn't make you an engineer. Real engineering is tested under pressure. It doesn't fall apart the moment cameras turn on. He paused dramatically before adding, maybe now people will listen to the professionals again. Javon heard the recording on repeat. It played in his head even when it wasn't playing in the room. He could still see the moment the prototype failed. The shudder, the crack, the gasp from Sasha, the disappointment in Eli's voice. He stopped answering texts, stopped eating meals on time. For 3 days, he didn't return to the garage. It sat in the backyard like a tomb, silent and waiting, full of broken things and unspoken questions. He began to wonder, had they been right all along? Had the 5 seconds been a fluke? Had he convinced himself of brilliance that wasn't real? Every success he'd clung to, reviving the engine, the blueprint, the test runs, now felt like scattered luck. And luck doesn't last. On the 4th day, Eli knocked on his door. Javon didn't move. Eli let himself in. I ran diagnostics on the converter again, he said, not asking for permission. It didn't just short. Javon looked up slowly. There was sugar in the voltage line, Eli continued. Crystallized residue inside the fuse housing. Enough to choke the battery, overheat it, and destroy the current flow. Javon blinked. It wasn't a technical failure, Eli said. It was sabotage. The words hit like a defibrillator. What? I thought I messed up. But this wasn't us, Eli said firmly. Someone did this, on purpose. Javon's mind sprinted backwards through the garage, the late-night sessions, the prototype's layout.
Then he remembered.
2 days before the demo, he'd gone out to get more solder wire. Sasha had left early that night. Eli had stayed to label parts. But the garage had been unlocked for almost an hour. Anyone could have come in. They told Marilyn that afternoon. She didn't hesitate. I want the FBI on this, she snapped. This isn't schoolyard vandalism anymore. This is targeted racial sabotage involving intellectual property. She filed the report within 24 hours. The FBI's Tech Crimes Division acknowledged the case. Pending investigation. Review process begun. A case number was assigned. It sounded promising. But Javon had learned something about promises. They were only as strong as the power behind them. That night, something gnawed at him. He stepped back into the garage. Alone. The silence greeted him like an old friend. He started checking every corner, every drawer, panel, storage bin, looking not for what was missing, but for what didn't belong. Then behind a stack of spare aluminum sheets, wedged into the far corner, he found it. A small black plastic object, nearly invisible in the dim light, about the size of a quarter, a hidden camera. Javon stared at it, throat tight. It was coated in dust, which meant it had been there for weeks. Someone had been watching, not just stealing, studying. He turned the device over, and scratched into the bottom were 2 letters. H. His fingers went cold, because those initials didn't belong to any student. They matched a teacher's keycard ID, Halbridge. The moment Javon saw the initials carved into the back of the hidden camera, the air in the garage changed. He didn't move, just stared. The plastic was smooth, professionally manufactured, not something a student would pick up at a hobby store. It was embedded in a matte black casing, nearly invisible, unless you were looking for it. Javon's breath slowed. Halbridge. He had known the man was racist, known he was threatened, known he'd said things behind closed doors he'd never dare say into a mic. But this, Spying? In his home? It took hours for him to take his hands off the device. He sat on the cold concrete floor of the garage, just staring at it in his palm like it might speak. The next morning, Marilyn stormed into the Carter house before the sun rose, holding coffee in one hand and federal paperwork in the other. "The device is real," she said, slamming the documents onto the table. "I already had our tech forensics team analyze it overnight." She laid down a printed schematic of the microchip serial number, traced directly to a vendor the school district contracts for internal surveillance. "This thing's encrypted to a district security server, Javon," she said. "Which means it was never a rogue device. It was installed with access to their entire system." Kendra nearly dropped her mug. "So they were watching him while he worked in our home?" Marilyn nodded grimly. "This wasn't just sabotage. This was surveillance. And unless someone proves otherwise, this is illegal." By noon, the FBI had escalated the case. A full team arrived, gloved, quiet, methodical. They bagged the camera, traced its transmission log, and confirmed what Marilyn had suspected. The feed had been quietly transmitting for weeks. Not to an external device. Not to Halbridge's phone. To a proxy server housed inside the school's own security mainframe. "Somebody went out of their way to bury this," the lead agent murmured, "and they didn't expect it to be found." By the following Monday, it was over. Halbridge resigned, quietly. No press conference, no apology. The school board accepted the resignation with respect for years of service. But the truth didn't go quietly. Marilyn leaked the resignation memo with a scathing statement. "If you resign in silence after being exposed in disgrace, you're not escaping accountability. You're confirming guilt." Public backlash reached a boiling point. Parents called for transparency. Local newspapers ran front-page spreads. Students walked the halls with duct tape over their mouths. A silent protest for every unheard word Javon had swallowed. The pressure cracked something deeper. 2 days later, the board announced a new appointment. Tremaine Ford, a Black Marine veteran turned education equity advocate. His appointment wasn't subtle, it was a statement. Javon met him outside the boardroom after the vote. Ford shook his hand with quiet strength. "Keep building," he said. "We've got your back now. But don't let us be the only reason you do it." It was the first time in months Javon felt safe in a handshake. In the days that followed, the garage came alive again. Javon, Sasha, and Eli rebuilt the prototype from the ground up. No more salvaged plastic or aluminum. This time they used carbon frame panels donated by Dr. Moreau's lab, torque reducers from a local bike startup, and high-density solar capacitors provided by an anonymous donor who signed the package simply as, "For the future you deserve." This time it wasn't a reaction. It was a revolution. The engine, now named Polaris 4, was sleek, silent, and flawless. A few weeks later, they packed it up, secured in a travel crate, and boarded a train to the Detroit Youth Innovation Tech Fair. Javon barely spoke on the ride. He sat by the window, headphones around his neck, staring at the blur of cities and fields rushing past. Not nervous. Ready. At the fair, surrounded by flashing LED walls and high-tech booths, Javon's table was quiet. No gimmicks. Just a single covered platform. When he pulled the cloth back and powered it on, the Polaris 4 purred without a sound. It didn't just run. It danced. Engineers, recruiters, young inventors, people stopped, filmed, stared. They didn't see a fluke. They saw a future. That afternoon, a tall man in a gray hoodie approached their booth, quietly, without introducing himself. He didn't ask many questions, just nodded thoughtfully, and watched the engine with arms crossed. Then he slipped Sasha a card. It had one word printed on it in silver ink. Tesla. An hour later, Javon checked his phone. One new message. No subject line. Just a sentence. "We'd like to invite you to our innovation lab in Palo Alto. Let's talk future." Signed, Elon's team. The air in Palo Alto smelled like ambition. Glass towers, lithium batteries, and coffee brewed in sleek, climate-controlled corridors. It was a long way from Meadow Ridge, Pennsylvania, and an even longer way from the cracked engine that had changed everything. Javon stood at the entrance of the Tesla Innovation Lab, his visitor badge clipped to his hoodie, the name Carter. Javon printed in bold black ink. His heart raced, not with nerves but momentum. He had come here on invitation, not as a subject of scandal, not as a footnote in someone else's system, but as a creator. Inside, the space was cathedral-like vaulted ceilings, skylights pouring in sun over rows of silent machines, and humming prototypes. Clean white walls, matte black work tables. Engineers moved with quiet focus, like surgeons in a dream of the future. A team was already waiting for him. Mr. Carter, one said, offering a firm handshake. We've been looking forward to this. They didn't waste time. They led him to a private conference bay, where a group of engineers and analysts had printed and dissected his Polaris 4 schematics. Pages were taped to the glass. Notations lined the margins. Someone had even recreated his voltage map in CAD. You reduced solar conversion loss by nearly 14%, an engineer said, without silicon boosters. Another added, and your use of magnetic torque modulation. That's not just efficient, it's elegant. They weren't condescending. They weren't surprised.
They were impressed.
For the first time, Javon wasn't explaining why he deserved to be there. He was the room. After hours of walkthroughs, questions, and 2 engine tests, a lead design director, her name tag reading L. Zheng, leaned in. We'd like to offer you a summer internship, she said. Full access, mentorship, and a stipend. Javon blinked. That's incredible. Thank you. There's only one catch, she added, gently. We'll need official recommendation and transcript confirmation from your current school, for compliance. The words hit like a brake slammed at full speed. Javon nodded slowly. Right. The school. Back home, Marilyn submitted the paperwork the moment the plane touched down. But 2 days later, an email arrived from Meadow Ridge. Due to unresolved disciplinary action and pending review of past infractions, the district is not able to provide academic endorsement at this time. That was it. No signature, no explanation. Just silence dressed up in policy. The internet exploded. Sasha posted the rejection email on Twitter with a caption that read, "He built a better engine. They still won't sign the form." Within hours it went viral. A retired NASA astronaut reposted it, writing, "This kid is the future. Shame on his school." Actor Lakeith Stanfield shared it with 3 fire emojis. Local activists in Pennsylvania began organizing protests at Meadow Ridge. Even Senator Warren's office made a statement, "Educational gatekeeping of black youth brilliance must end." But it wasn't enough to shout. Sasha knew that. So she created a petition. The title, "Let Javon Carter Build." Approve the Tesla internship. It gained 50,000 signatures in 3 hours. Then 300,000 overnight. By the end of the week it crossed 1.2 million. Major media outlets began referring to him as the engine prodigy. Talk show hosts invited him on to speak, but Javon declined. This wasn't about celebrity. It was about access. The kind of access his community had been denied for generations. Marilyn called a press conference at the school gates. Cameras pointed. Reporters jostled. She stepped to the mic and held up the unsigned transcript request. "This paper," she said, "isn't just red tape. It's a noose around opportunity. It's what happens when brilliance is filtered through fear, when systems would rather bury talent than admit they were wrong." Behind her, students held signs. "Let him build. He outran your bias. We're not waiting for permission." Inside the school, the walls were crumbling. Not literally, but ideologically. Principal Whitmore refused interviews. The board remained quiet, but pressure was mounting. Tremaine Ford had submitted a motion to force the district's compliance under federal equity mandates. It was scheduled for review within the week. And then, out of nowhere, Javon received a visitor. It was a Saturday morning. The sky was overcast. Javon was in the garage, wiping down the shell of Polaris 4 like it was sacred. A knock came from the side door. Kendra opened it and froze. "Javon," she called, voice cold and clipped. He stepped into the doorway, and there he was.
Mr. Halbridge.
Standing in the driveway. No tie, no clipboard, just age in his eyes and regret coiled in his posture. "I'd like to talk," Halbridge said softly. Javon didn't move, because the man who tried to destroy him was now on his doorstep, and he wasn't alone. Standing just behind him was a second man, one Javon had never seen before, but whose face was nearly identical to his own. Javon stood in the doorway, stunned, not because of Halbridge, but because of the man standing beside him. He looked like a slightly older mirror of Javon. Same cheekbones, same jawline, same intense gaze. Only time and burden set them apart. The man didn't speak. Halbridge did. "I asked him to come," he said quietly. He's your father." The world went silent. Javon blinked, as if the air had suddenly thinned. Kendra appeared behind him, voice low and sharp. You don't get to do this, not like this. But Halbridge didn't flinch. His shoulders sagged with something heavier than guilt. I came to say something, he said, eyes locked on Javon. You don't have to forgive me. But I couldn't stay quiet anymore. They sat in the garage, the three of them, Javon, Halbridge, and the man named Malcolm Reese, who confirmed in a voice taut with shame that yes, he was Javon's biological father. He had left when Javon was just 6 months old. Disappeared. Afraid I'd mess up something beautiful, he said. But it was Halbridge who unraveled first. I spent my whole career pretending I was teaching machines, he said, voice shaking. But I was really trying to control people, keep the system from changing too fast. His hands were clenched tightly. You scared me, he admitted. Not because you were angry or loud, but because you were better, and I wasn't ready for that. Javon didn't say much. His silence held more weight than words. When Halbridge tried to place a hand on his shoulder, Javon flinched. Kendra stepped in. You don't get to break him and then act like you built him. I know, Halbridge whispered. That's why I'm here. He paused, swallowing hard. I've spoken to the press, he continued. Told them everything. The emails, the camera, the sabotage. I gave a statement. No excuses. Marilyn later confirmed it. The video aired on a local station, Halbridge sitting stiffly in a studio chair, tears sliding down his weathered face. I failed. I feared what I didn't understand. And I tried to dim a light that was never mine to touch. But the public didn't rally behind him. The internet called it what it smelled like. Damage control. Too late. Save the tears. Crying for the pension he's about to lose. Back at Meadow Ridge, the pressure became unbearable. With public opinion swelling like a tide, and Marilyn preparing a civil lawsuit against the district, the school board met in emergency session. Javon didn't attend, but the outcome was delivered to his doorstep in a letter hand-delivered by Tremaine Ford himself. It was short. All disciplinary records against Javon Carter are hereby expunged. A formal apology will be issued. The school district acknowledges systemic failures in addressing the situation and will launch equity training immediately. Kendra read it aloud. Then she passed it to Javon, who didn't smile. He just exhaled, like something heavy had been finally put down. Days later, a new email came in. From Tesla. The internship was officially confirmed. No conditions. No waiting. No bureaucracy. The paperwork would follow. Zheng's note at the bottom was short. Your future is yours now. Build it. Meanwhile, Halbridge's life unraveled. The civil liability case, spearheaded by Marilyn, unearthed not only the surveillance scandal, but dozens of past complaints from students of color, complaints that had been buried or dismissed. The court moved fast. His pension was frozen pending investigation, his name removed from school plaques, a quiet erasure of a man who had tried so hard to erase others. But while the world debated whether Halbridge was redeemed or just cornered, Javon stayed focused. He worked, he wrote, he built, he avoided interviews, until one call changed that. A major network, NTN America, requested a live, uncensored primetime interview. The host, Vanessa Cortez, known for raw, honest storytelling. No pre-screened questions, no spin, just Javon. His story, unfiltered. Marilyn handed him the invite, watching his reaction. You don't have to do it, she said. But Javon was already staring out the window, the city lights dancing in his eyes, because somewhere deep down, he already knew. It was time. The studio lights were colder than Javon expected. Bright, clinical, casting no shadows and leaving nowhere to hide. He sat in the center of a sleek glass table, palms flat against the surface, a wireless mic clipped to his hoodie. Across from him was Vanessa Cortez, award-winning journalist, known for her brutal honesty and refusal to let a single story be watered down. She was elegant and sharp, her eyes laser-focused as if she were reading beyond the script, into Javon's marrow. 5 seconds, a producer said from off-camera. We're live in 5. Javon inhaled deeply, but not for show. This moment wasn't about performance. It was about truth. The segment opened with a brief montage, black and white photos of Javon fixing his first engine, images of the sabotaged garage, flashes of protest signs at Meadow Ridge, Halbridge's resignation, the Tesla invitation. Then it cut to Javon, live. No background music, no dramatic graphics, just a boy who had become something much more than a headline. Vanessa opened simply. Javon, you've been through a storm. Why did you agree to speak now? Javon looked straight into the camera, voice clear. Because they tried to turn my silence into shame. He paused. But I wasn't ashamed. I was building. For the next 40 minutes, Javon spoke calmly, directly, and without compromise. He recounted the sabotage, the suspension, the surveillance. He didn't exaggerate or dramatize. He didn't have to. The facts were heavier than fiction. Vanessa leaned in. There are people watching tonight who will say your story is unique, that you're an anomaly. What do you say to that? Javon didn't hesitate. I'm not an anomaly, he said. I'm just one of the few who was seen before they buried me. The air in the studio changed. Even the producers stopped fidgeting. He continued, voice growing stronger. There are thousands of kids who could build what I built, who already are. But we spend more money on policing their behavior than investing in their potential. He turned again to the camera. And it's not just Meadow Ridge. It's the entire system. Schools in suburbs pretending racism doesn't live in their classrooms. Pretending equity means giving a few black kids permission to sit in the back of the room and stay quiet. Vanessa let the silence sit, then asked, what do you want? Javon breathed in. I want black STEM programs funded like football. I want garages full of tools, not just trophies. I want every kid who ever got laughed at for loving circuits more than sports to know they were never the problem. He looked into the lens again. And I want people to stop calling this a miracle. It's not. It's overdue. The broadcast ended with standing applause from the crew. Not because it was a performance, but because it was a declaration. By morning, the internet had turned Javon's words into headlines. I wasn't ashamed. I was building. Javon Carter sets the internet on fire with viral interview. We're not anomalies. We're the future. The broadcast that changed how America sees black genius. Within 72 hours, the first ripple became a wave. A group of black tech CEOs launched a $5 million fund for underrepresented student inventors. 3 HBCUs announced new STEM incubators, named after Javon. A grassroots initiative called Rewire the System started a campaign to place engineering kits in 100 predominantly black schools. By the end of the year, major districts from Georgia to Illinois announced they'd be adopting Javon's project-based model in their STEM classes, turning garages into labs, empowering students to create instead of memorize. And in his inbox, a simple subject line appeared. MIT, full ride. Class of The message was short. We're not interested in just your test scores. We're interested in what you're building next. Welcome to MIT. Javon. That night, Kendra cried for the first time since the garage was destroyed. Not out of sadness, but because for once the world didn't just try to punish her son's brilliance. It amplified it. Javon hugged her tight. Neither said anything. They didn't need to. Days later, Javon stood at the edge of a newly opened community makerspace. It wasn't shiny. It wasn't state-of-the-art. It was real. Converted shipping container retrofitted into a functioning lab, with soldering tables, solar kits, old engine frames, and 3D printers donated by companies watching the headlines. A sign above the garage-style door read, "The Carter Workshop." Powered by purpose. Javon exhaled, gripped the handle, and pulled the rolling door upward. The hinges creaked, and before him stood a line of kids. Black, brown, curious, nervous, some gripping toolboxes, others just holding notebooks and big fragile dreams. None of them asked, "Am I good enough?" because they had already seen someone who looked like them prove it wasn't a question anymore. At the front of the line, one small boy raised his hand and asked, "Can I build something with you?" Javon smiled. But before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We're building something big, and we need your mind. You in?" In the early morning glow of the community makerspace, the Carter Workshop, Javon unlocked the door with trembling fingers. The dirt on his sneakers seemed like a badge of authenticity now, not a sign of status. Inside, Sasha and Eli were already setting up tables, cluttered with solar kits, wiring sets, and stripped-down mini-engines, donated tools buzzing with possibility. Word had spread fast. Parents dropped off kids, hopeful for codes, circuits, and a spark of something bigger than themselves. Javon nodded at Sasha and Eli. Together they'd built more than engines. They'd built trust. A few weeks later, Rewired Futures, the nonprofit Javon founded, held its first formal meeting. The table inside the workshop was packed with teenagers from neighborhoods. With no labs, no mentors, no voice. Javon stood at the front, calm but pulsing with purpose. "Welcome to Rewired Futures," he said. This isn't class. It's not about passing tests. It's about building your future in your hands. He paused. The room stayed silent, every student waiting. We're not teaching you to follow. We're teaching you to build, and to own what you build. The story once local was now national. Journalists showed up with lights. Social media captured moments of invention. Videos of teens reviving motors, coding simple bots, powering circuits off solar cells, amassed millions of views. Profiles called Javon, the teen who rewired racism. They traced his journey from sabotaged garage to national stage. They emphasized how he channeled grief into graphs, threats into torque maps, hatred into horsepower. Through it all, Javon stayed grounded. Not cynical, not performative, just present. Every headline felt less like celebration, and more like confirmation. He belonged not just in headlines but in history. Meanwhile, Mr. Halbridge had resurfaced in a surprising way. A small local paper in rural Pennsylvania ran a story. Former AutoTech teacher hints at redemption. Now works behind the counter of a quiet repair shop. The article quoted Halbridge. I'm doing repair work now. No classes, no lectures, just me and machines in a small town, quietly learning. He refused interviews. He didn't reach out to Javon. He just disappeared into obscurity. Quiet, punished, perhaps finally learning humility the hard way. Sasha and Eli became co-leads at Rewired Futures. They coordinated workshops, designed curriculum, and managed donor relations. Kids called them Big Sister and Big Brother, even though they were only a few years older. Sasha led robotics labs on Saturdays. Eli supervised solar charging demos during clinics. And Javon? He was always there, circling the room, answering questions, sometimes just listening as inspiration filled the space. The culmination came when Javon was asked to keynote at the National Student Tech and Innovation Conference in Washington, D.C. He stepped out onto a minimalist stage, before thousands of students, educators, tech executives, journalists. The auditorium went still. He began. When my teacher dared me to fix an impossible engine, every eye in that room was on what I couldn't do. But 5 seconds later, I heard something louder than their whispers. He recounted the journey without sensationalizing pain. He wove in the sabotage, the suspension, the surveillance, all as chapters in a broader narrative of institutional neglect that could be rebuilt. When he closed, he said, "It only took 5 seconds. But they'll never ever forget it." The audience stood, not just in applause, but in acknowledgement of what was possible and overdue. After the speech, a quiet envelope was slipped to him backstage. Inside, only 3 lines. Think you made your mark. Think again. This is bigger. See you soon. No name, no logo, just a steel resolve in black ink. Javon folded it and placed it in his pocket. That night, back at the Carter home, Kendra stared at her son, not with concern, not with gout, but with quiet pride, the kind that remembered scraped knees and lonely nights building alone. "I'm ready for tomorrow," she said simply. Javon looked down at the note again. He'd thought he'd built one engine. But the words echoed, "This is bigger." He smiled. Because whatever this was, it was just beginning. No one should have to prove their worth just to be treated with dignity. But stories like Javon's happen every day. Quiet, buried, unseen. If you believe brilliance should be protected, not punished, type yes. If you believe in justice,